Martin and Malcolm, Xavier and Magneto. These guys wanted integration, and these guys thought they'd never truly be accepted. So are these two Marvel legends based on these civil rights icons? Well, let's dive deeper. Alright, so boom, the X-Men debuted in September 1963, at the height of the black struggle for equality in America. There are arguments on both sides whether or not the leaders of the mutants are stand-ins for Martin and Malcolm. Most are diametrically opposing views, but the real answer, somewhere in the middle. The mutants were hated and feared by society, much like blacks in America. Charles MLK Xavier pushed for a world where mutants and humans could live in harmony. Magneto Shabazz was like, nah bruh, you tripping. They never gonna rock with us. We gotta fight these mother. I didn't really cuss, I just thought that sounded funny. Anyway, in the interview that Stan Lee did with The Guardian in 2000, he said, it not only made them different, but it was a good metaphor for what was happening within the civil rights movement in the country at the time. Even with that said, early depictions of Magneto and Xavier are a lot less like Malcolm and Martin than they are today. More so than Stan Lee, writer Chris Claremont may be more responsible for the similarities that they've had for most of their existence. Lee set it up perfectly, and Claremont drove it home. Most of the arguments against Martin and Malcolm are almost because the characters are like not named after them or something. As if when telling a story, that story doesn't begin to take on a life of its own. It doesn't have to be a 100% match. They say things like, Magneto and Xavier aren't black, Xavier wasn't religious, Malcolm wasn't a supervillain bent on world domination. Newsflash, in the eyes of white America in the 1960s, Malcolm made Magneto look like Ward Cleaver on a Sunday stroll in Mayfield. So picture this, the Sentinels, an army of mutant hunting robots, will make their way into the comics as those same readers watched on TV as black Americans were beaten and accosted by white police officers. Magneto and Xavier really want the same thing, peace for mutants, but their ideological differences force them to be enemies. Despite this, they have an underlying respect for each other. When Malcolm was killed in 1965, Martin sent a telegram to his wife that read in part, "While we did not always see eye to eye on methods to solve the race problem, I always had a deep affection for Malcolm and felt that he had the great ability to put his finger on the existence and root of the problem." Some writers and bloggers seem to hate the fact that these comparisons even exist, and they type faster than Usain Bolt on the back half of the 100-meter dash, all in attempts to completely kill the idea that Magneto and Xavier are Malcolm and Martin. At this point, though we may be able to argue about their inception, it's impossible to deny that they have been heavily modeled after the two greatest martyrs of American civil rights. From the 70s onto the 80s and 90s, the model only became stronger. Countless times Xavier is said to have a dream where humans and mutants can live in harmony. Then with the release of the first X-Men movie in 2000, the film ended with Magneto speaking Brother Malcolm's most iconic phrase, "By any means necessary." Like I said, it's undeniable at this point.
I have a dream. By any means necessary.